2025 GR86 Hakone Edition. 1024 manufacture date, got about 1,000 miles. Why don't we find out if Mount Hakone is actually a mountain of RTV? Let's go check it out. Pulling off the lower oil pan, we see the updated light gray RTV and excess amount as expected. A few other things to note in this pan. We did the RTV inspection as well. Since this is the second 2025 we've done, I was curious, again, the correlation between if we find anything in the oil that we drain out, if we find anything in the oil filter. The oil that we drained out was pretty much clean and free of RTV, normal amount of break-in material. Although if we look in the bottom of the pan, you can see there's this raised portion next to one of the oil return tubes, and you can see there was a lot of break-in material stuck in that little recess to the right of the raised portion. In fact, on the top right, you can see there was almost like a pool of sludge of this break-in material. You can see how the drain plug actually sits higher than that valley. So I don't know, it just kind of worries me if there's foreign debris or junk, it's gonna get stuck in that valley and not ever get drained out. I'm also curious why they decided to put this raised portion in the pan instead of making it flat to at least try to increase some of the wet sump capacity. Some other things worth noting before we look inside the oil strainer. Pretty rough as far as the deburr work inside this upper oil pan and crankcase. You can see the normal spot where in the past we've found a significant amount of excess casting flash. You can see spots all around the lower oil pan where I'd say the deburr robot missed and either did a really rough job deburring or missed the deburr spots entirely. And so there's actually marks on the inside of this upper oil pan where it wasn't intended to be a deburr spot, but you can see the tool went over it anyway. I thought this was worth noting since we've had at least one very serious excess casting flash problem before, and then just in my opinion, the deburr work in here from the robot looked really rough, and then some spots got deburred that really shouldn't have. So I'm curious what happened with this one. And finally, taking a look inside the oil strainer, not what I expected compared to the previous 2025 we did. So visibly about 3 larger pieces in here, but overall a clean oil strainer that gives me and the owner more peace of mind that this engine was, quote unquote, probably sealed properly and doesn't have a bunch of excess RTV hanging loose or about to break off. Looking at what we pulled out, you can see a lot more than what we could visibly see inside the oil strainer. A lot of the RTV I pulled off was on some of the flats that the camera couldn't capture a photo of. Although really surprising, in this one, our old friend Mr. Red Speck, hello buddy, I haven't seen you in a long time. There was plenty of red specks inside this oil pickup. So again, I'm really curious. We've assumed thus far the colored specks have been some sort of thread locker, but there was definitely a lot of these red specks. And getting ahead of ourselves, there was a lot of the red specks inside the oil filter as well. So I'm curious, the tooling works from the deburr process, the rough deburr, and then all the red specks. What was different in the manufacturing process of this particular engine? Again, 1024 manufacture date. Again, cutting open the oil filter as part of our RTV inspection, seeing if there's any correlation between RTV in the pickup and what we find during our inspection. Majority of the pleats were like this, either scattered small pieces of RTV. Majority of the pleats were clean, but you can see Mr. Red Speck right there, and that was the story with a lot of the pleats in this oil filter. There was definitely a fair amount of red specks in here. Again, with these RTV inspections, it seems like with the later cars, we are not seeing as many colors as the early 22s and 23s. And I'm really curious in the manufacturing process why. And also, somebody please tell us what these colored specks actually are.